So, köszönöm szépen, és gratulálok a sikerült kinyitni ezt a helyet. Szerintem mindig nyitva kellene lenni. But I will switch now to English for the rest of my presentation because I'm not Hungarian, so and also for the other guests here. I want to talk about inclusive placemaking in a project that we've been working on in the west of Amsterdam. And placemaking for us has a lot of different values that we try to implement in this neighborhood, because this is a migrant neighborhood. It's a low-income neighborhood, predominantly Moroccan, Turkish neighborhood. And it needs a lot of social, economic, as well as physical regeneration, which we try to do not for the residents, but with the residents. So we built this whole community to start transforming these very old-fashioned, out-of-date houses, but also the public space in the area. And we really first built the network of all the initiatives in the area. That was kind of the first step that we took to understand what is this neighborhood about. So we started making contact with all the various initiatives that are there. And we discovered that actually there are a lot of initiatives in the area from a citizen perspective, but they don't call themselves initiatives, they call themselves, I'm helping out my neighbor. I'm helping out my neighbor for food, for local jobs, for their children. And through these networks, we found these 5 informal leaders in the neighborhood. Fouad Lekbier, Nadia Aktu, Sebo Bakker, Mbarka Nabir, and Margreet van der Vlies, who were kind of the nodes in that network. And we invited them to organize the further participation for us, because they have the access to the networks, they know what's happening in the neighborhood, and because they have been doing this for 10 years already. And one of the things we discovered through them is that one of the great initiatives in the area that was already there when we started was that they turned one of the internal spaces of a housing block, a social housing block, into a community garden. And for me, this is placemaking because it gives access to this space that was otherwise unused for the people who live there. They have an idea that can influence it. They find it important as a social function because most of the gardens are like this, are only the gardens that you can look at and you can't use them really. But there was another very important reason why there's a waiting list for this initiative, and that's for a lot of people in the neighborhood, it's also an affordable way to get food. For a lot of people in the neighborhood, 30 euros a month, more or less, is a great, great difference. So when we started asking the residents in the neighborhood, what would you like in the future regeneration, a lot of them said, we want to have these community gardens opened, these closed gardens opened as community gardens. So we started working on a project where first we only had one community garden, to look at the potential of how we could expand that network with the residents. So we started going block by block, inviting the residents, would you like a community garden? What would you like to do with your garden? Even a more open question. And we are now at the point where we, in 2 years' time, build a network of 5 community gardens in the neighborhood. We just opened the small 5th one, actually a public space. That took us a year to do that with the city of Amsterdam, so it isn't always easy. But we see we have the potential to grow into a network of 15 community gardens. And this is a part of the participation process we engaged to get people on board. In this case, for instance, in this block, we activated 40 residents to get involved in their own environment, thereby feel more connected to their environment, have a better say in what's happening in the neighborhood, and those people will then also participate more in the physical regeneration of the neighborhood. So it taps into a lot of values. The step we're now taking is that we want those community gardens not to be temporary but permanent, because we want to keep this neighborhood affordable on the long term as well, and we think the community gardens are going to be important for the long term as well. So we're now building the neighborhood organization for management of all those community gardens with the active residents. And it also allows us to think about the scale, the larger scale allows us to think about engaging organizations who employ people with a distance to the labor market, to do part of the maintenance of these community gardens, and then thereby creating yet another value, because this is a neighborhood with a lot of unemployment and a lot of mental problems in the area. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to talk about briefly, and to show that placemaking can go many, many ways in various communities, various sets. Here we're opening after a year of hard work, we're opening the community garden in public space. And I think it's very important to take this notion of inclusive placemaking, because sometimes placemaking is associated with hipster places, expensive craft beers and deck chairs. But I think every community deserves a heart of the place where they can get together and be among each other. So that was my 50 cents. Thank you very much.